everyone. We're going to get this show on the road. Thank you for coming tonight as we meet some of the people who would like our vote in the upcoming federal election. I'm your MC, Fiona Searle. Tonight we'll get a sense of their plans for our reef, climate and energy. But firstly, and most importantly, I'd like to introduce a traditional custodian from the land we gathered on tonight. Firstly, can I acknowledge the traditional custodian for the Bimai Waliwara Yudechi people, Josephine Creek. Unfortunately, Josephine is unable to be with us tonight, but she does pass on her regards for a great evening. So let me introduce now Gavin Singleton, who is the traditional custodian for the Irriganji people.
Gurunggu menganya binunda, gurunggu banyak binunda, guru menganya binunda. Mau Irriganji peman mau guru baru dulu banyak lugu guru baru dulu ngan kami guru baru dulu nyur bagaran ngan jembulba guru bulba ngan jembaman Irriganji Jirinji Bungganji Japakanji ngan jembul Jipindi ngan jembama puku meneguri jalan nyur bang guru garan guru dijiri ngan bulba jalan guru yang di mama gua jalan untuk bomba, untuk para Jabakanji, Bolwanji, Malwiji, Ngatinji, Jerbau, Bama, Juwarinji, Bunda Bomba, Bana Wangau, Yerenji, Bama. So, I pay my respect to Dokupara, Wangambara, Maningampai, Malambara, Kosaren, Rupinda as well, and I want to pay my respect to Nujaremundo Bunga, Bunganji, Bama, Darapa, Munyami, Gabra, No Yiri Baba, Bunwara. So basically, in my language, I'm also talking to my old people and also talking to you as well. Just telling them I come from the land as well. And I want to give my respect to all the traditional owners, all the family groups that make up this broader landscape, cultural landscape here of Cairns. To the north, my neighbours, the Woolyalanji people of north of Port Douglas, Mossman, the Daintree area. Also on the mountain to the west of us, we have the Jabagai people of Kuranga, Bulwanji people, but also beyond them, the Monariji people of Mariba, the Ngajinji people, Tabalang Yirinji, but also Ngajinji people, Ray Malanda, Jirabal people in the back, and also all the families of Yirinji Nation of south of Cairns. And I want to send my respect as well to a couple of Yirinji Bama here, so Dennis, Norman, so congratulations here. And I also extend my respect to the Bunganji people straight across the inland of Yarrabah. And the reason why I want to extend my respect is because through kinship I am by a family connected to all these different places as well. And so here, speaking to you in this formal event, I'll get in trouble if I don't respect them as well. I'm from the Irriganji clan, part of the Jabagai language nation going north of here, north of Cairns. And my great-granddad was born just on the Cairns Esplanade on the northern end, up near a place we call in our language Barajali, near what is the old pirate ship on the northern end of the Esplanade. There's a Guyala cafe there now, playground, but it's all reclaimed. And we had an old camp back there. And in the mangroves of the Cairns airport was really, really important. So from there all the way here, in the mouth of the inlet, is really important to me. But I know that it's also important to all other different families here connected to Cairns, so Yirinji people, and Gunganji as well. And why I say that, this place here is really, really important. Even though we see buildings and roads, we cannot forget the cultural heritage, the cultural places that we still know, and we still celebrate today, and we still remember. And through our Caring for Country activities, we're trying to look after these different places, all the different waterways and creeks that are really, really important to our people. They play a huge part in our language, our law, our custom, our beliefs, and our well-being. So how we live in harmony with the environment and the land, and our stories with the land also talks about the connection to the sea, the Great Barrier Reef that we have on our doorstep here. So wet tropics rainforest, the Great Barrier Reef, and all these significant ecosystems that we live in here today. We need to look after them genuinely, properly, and our people need to be front and center, but we also can't do it alone. This is where we need everyone, our community here, everyone here in the room, but even our all levels of government to support these aspirations of traditional owners across this whole landscape within the Great Barrier Reef or in the wet tropics landscape. And as we know, there are a lot of different programs coming from the Commonwealth, whether it be our Indigenous Ranger programs or traditional use marine resources agreements and other sort of programs as well, Indigenous protected areas. I currently manage our Ranger program, Irukandji Land and Sea Ranger program, and we're fortunate to receive funding from the Australian government and also our Tamara as well. So I do have some questions for the candidates as well. Maybe too many questions. But I guess my aspiration or questions is around, with the Australian government, with these candidates, with the policies that are emerging, what is it in terms of Indigenous ranger positions? What is it in terms of some of this work that's happening on the Great Barrier Reef? Particularly with the listing of endangerment of our Great Barrier Reef. How can we address these issues, and how can traditional owners play a role in that, but also partnering with our tourism industry. Our reef tourism operators are doing an amazing job out here, and also with the different groups that are here today. We all play a role, whether it is in the catchments, doing our cleanups, doing our bed, planting trees, or whether it is directly on the reef, improving our water quality, improving our fish habitats. But anyway, I don't take up the rest of the time. I wish you all in good spirit on behalf of our people. Lana Mayan, Guri Alaguli, Guri Boka, thank you.
Thank you so much. Traditional custodian for the Irukandji people, Gavin Singleton, for that very warm welcome, and also on behalf of Josephine Creek from the Girai Wallibari Irukandji people, unable to be with us tonight. It's great to see you all here. Fantastic turnout for the Leichhardt Reef Climate and Energy Forum, organised by the groups that you can see around me: the Australian Marine Conservation Society, Cairns Far North Environment Centre, Divers for Climate, and the Queensland Conservation Council. We also have representation from Parents for Climate, the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, and Our Islands, Our Home. Lots of information around, so please make sure you do grab some flyers, there's stickers, lots of great information to find out more about what these groups are doing in this environment space. Big thank you to the Hemingways for having us here tonight. You can support them by like a beer. And if you haven't had enough pizza, there is food available. You can order more food if you're still a bit peckish. The loos are to my right down the end, past the tanks, the beer tanks. If you do need to go, that's fine. You can just duck out, we're going to be going for a couple of hours, so you might need to duck off. We have a professional photographer here tonight. Her name is Ange. She's just behind you there in the red top. She has been wandering around taking photos. If you don't want your photo taken, just let her know. She'll be cool. It's all good. And also we have a professional videographer, Phil. Where are you, Phil? Oh, there he is. Also at the back. Phil will be taking video. Same story. If you don't want to be have your face on a video, please let Phil know. We do have a lucky door prize tonight. So when you came in, if you registered, you would have been given a raffle ticket, and that will be drawn at the end of the night. We'll be off on Passions in Paradise to enjoy a beautiful day out on the Great Barrier Reef. So you do need to stick around though. You've got to be here to claim that prize. So let me just give you a sense of how tonight's going to run. We'll let our candidates introduce themselves in just a moment. They've got a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about themselves. We'll have some special guests asking them questions, and then we'll move on to questions that you have submitted. A lot of you did submit questions when you registered, some great questions. I'll get to as many of them as I can, but of course time is of the essence. And we also want to get a big photo at the end, so we'll gather you for that as well. But let's meet our candidates. I just want to say that we invited all candidates tonight, everyone who's put their hand up. And you've got to admire anyone who sticks their head up to have a go at this game. We invited everybody. Unfortunately, we do have apologies from the Liberal National Party's Jeremy Neal, the One Nation Party's Robert Hicks, and Family First Party's Les Searle, unable to join us tonight. Look, we know it's a busy time. The election campaign hasn't been announced yet, but it is already a busy time for people who have put their hand up. So we are grateful for the three candidates that have made time to come and speak with the community tonight. We do really appreciate that. Now, in our front row, the most powerful person in the room tonight is Charlie. She's the timekeeper. We're going to keep a very strict time on questions and answers. We ask you to keep questions to a minute, and each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question. So I'll be keeping an eye on Charlie, and she'll be giving you the wind up. If not, I have a hook. It's metaphorical, so we go. So let's meet our first candidate. Now, when I did an online search for the ALP's Matt Smith, what popped up was Matt Smith height. Now I understand. Of course, Matt is a former player with the Cairns Taipans. He came here 20 years ago, loved the place so much that he wanted to stay. He works in community development in that space. And in case you're wondering, he is 6'11", 7 foot. He's 7 foot. Please make him welcome. Matt, you have 2 minutes to join us on stage and tell us a bit about yourself.
First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land which we live today, pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, take a moment to celebrate the world's oldest living culture. Over 60,000 years of unbroken connection to land, sea and country. And I thank you, Gav, for that welcome. I always enjoy Gav's welcomes. I'm not caught up with the words yet. My name is Matt Smith. I've been here for about 20 years. I'm an avid scuba diver. I love the reef. I taught my daughters to dive. Well, I didn't teach them to dive, the dive instructors did, but I wanted to instill on them a love of natural beauty, a love of nature. And they've taken to it in a way that I did not expect. And it's costing me a small fortune. But it got to the point where my youngest is now doing work experience on the dive boats, because she sees a future in Cairns, a future delivered by the reef, a future delivered by our tourism industry. I'm here tonight because I want you to understand that the environment is important. It's important to me, it's important to the Labor government. And that's why there's a 43% cut by 2030 in fossil fuels. It's legislated. That's a law. That's not a goal or an ambition. That's a law. The Reef has given us all so much. It's the reason that most of us are here and deserves to be protected. So I'm here tonight to advocate and to explain to you that I want to protect the Reef, and events like this are important for democracy. And so that's why I've come along tonight to share my time with you. And I thank you all for showing up. I thank Phil, I thank Norman, and I hope we have an enjoyable conversation about the most beautiful part of the world and what it gives back to all of us.
Thank you, Mungambana Norman Miller is standing as an independent in this election. He is from the Table and Ujiji peoples. He is an artist and pastor. This is not his first rodeo. Norman has run previously as an independent in the federal seat of Leichhardt. Please make him very welcome. Norman, please join us. You'll have 2 minutes to do that himself.
First of all, I'd like to honour the Creator of the heavens and the earth, our Heavenly Father, the sea and the land and everything that is in it. And also pay my respect to the Indigenous people of this land and the land that I stand on, but I'm also of this tribe here as well. The 2 other tribes that I come from is Jeremy and Barbarin, and as an artist, I have my business for 29 years. I celebrate. I'm not a government funding, never have been a government funding, so that just shows how Indigenous people, leaders like myself, can stand tall and strong. And the gallery is actually called Reef and Rainforest. And so I'm standing here tonight to be able to present, put my ideas and everything there together. So I just want to also thank the organisers for this great turn up here tonight. I know that I'm not here to please all that's here. You will vote the way you want to, what's on your heart. But importantly, I love this city. I've been in this city of Cairns for over 52 years. I love it. And importantly, the things that are important to me are the people. Are the people in this whole area, not only of Australia, but in Leichhardt, to the top of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. And it's very, very important that we look after each other, that we look after country, but we also look after the sea that we have been blessed with. So I want to, the time that I also have is in 2016, I won an international award on my award-winning book in Chicago. And might I say I had to go over there to be recognised in Chicago. Not here in Australia, it was in Chicago. And the book is Reef and Rainforest, in Aboriginal voice, in my Aboriginal name. And there's over 200 paintings. So one of the things I always campaign is when I go to places, I campaign this love. I love the city of Cairns. I see it as a city in a reef and rainforest. And I believe that standing tonight, that I sense that I can do so much, even as independent. You may look at the major parties, but don't forget the independents, because I will be here very, very close. And let me say that my voice will not be silent as an Indigenous voice.
Thank you so much. Our third candidate this evening, Phillip Musumeci, is standing for the Australian Greens. He grew up in a farm near Babinda, and he spent many years in the computer science and engineering space. He's no stranger to the rough and tumble of election campaigns. This is his second tilt for Leichhardt. So please make Phillip very welcome. Phillip, you also have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Phillip Musumeci, and I am a local. I spent time living away from here, so I find that if you do live away from here, you do come back to this area and have a deeper appreciation of the beauty of our environment. Of course, when I came back to Cairns, having lived in Wirrawee, I got to choose a drier part of Cairns to live in, which for me was where the gum trees are on the northern side of the Barron River. Or at least I thought that was the drier part. Tonight I'm here to give a Greens perspective on aspects of looking after our marine environment. I'm here looking at the renewable energy, aspects, and these all tie together with having a resilient place to live and it is a resilient society. And I've just realised that I should have also thank the custodians of the land and the sea. Sorry for that. As Fiona mentioned, I have worked in engineering, and that means that I can give an engineering perspective to energy use, and we use that to inform some of our views. In the Greens, we have got engineers working in groups such as energy transition. So sometimes we have got experts actually within our ranks. The same applies to urban design and also areas of the reef. Thank you.
Alrighty, so next we'll hear from some committee members who have some important questions for us. I just wanted to start though with our traditional custodian, Gavin. He mentioned a question that he would like the candidates to address around the issue of Indigenous ranges. So whether or not you have plans to expand those programs and continue further the great work that Indigenous rangers do in this area. Matt, you might go to you.
The Indigenous Ranger program is one of those great success stories. When I'm visiting Cape York AFL House, all those kids, they want to be rangers. When they had their photo exhibition at the Pullman, they all wanted to be rangers. It's a goal and ambition. That's why the Labor government invested $1.8 billion to double the amount of rangers right across the country. We're also seeing Indigenous rangers taking up the COTS program and dealing with the crown of thorns starfish, so it's not just on land, it is on sea. If you're going to have your country looked after, give that responsibility to the people that have been doing it for the better part of 70,000 years.
I'd like to certainly support the Indigenous Rangers. The most important thing for me is the whole area of education. And I've been blessed to be able to work in schools as an Indigenous liaison officer, and seeing a generation actually mentoring into the next emerging generations. And that's so important, because when you see a lot of the elders that's moved on there now, it's important to see the upcoming young ones that come through as a shining light and can be a beacon, and are seeing a major transformation and changes. And so that's one of the things on a grassroots level that's so important to, I think it's when you have a look at those rangers, not only within Cairns, but different communities that are able to have wonderful input. I think we need to look at the new generation that's coming through our schools, and it's something that I will continue to do. Grassroots level is so important.
The Greens have been proposing to double the number of rangers supported by the federal government, and we take the view that if our primary concern is making sure that we will have an environment that gives future generations the same quality of life as we have now, we would like people to have a low impact way of living on that land and looking after it. And if you do have rangers living on the land, making a low impact and depending on that environment for their sustenance, doing it in a way that lets it survive for future generations, and that is sustainable. So we see ranger programs as a way of having a long-term stewardship of the environment. The fact that those rangers depend on the environment means that we can be sure that environment will be looked after. So we're very much in favour, and at the last election we're proposing I think a doubling of the financial support from the federal government. We haven't released our policy in that area this time around, but it will be of that nature.
Thank you. Thank you for lovely answering that question. So now I'm going to invite some others to ask the questions, and they'll be keeping those questions to 1 minute. So we can keep them nice and concise, no double barrels, no Dorothy Dixes, nice and concise. And I ask the candidates to stick to their 2 minutes as well. And The thing I really wanted to mention before we open it up a bit more is that let's keep it all respectful. I know, we may not all agree with everything that's said here tonight. We might disagree with each other, but if we can just remember to speak to each other with respect and kindness, that's most important. So our first question from the floor is a Reef question from Becky Evans. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. So I've been working on the Great Barrier Reef for the last 6 years as a dive instructor and as a research diver, and I am representing the diver community who have seen so much of an effect on climate change in recent years, and over the past 5 months as well, incredibly high surface sea level temperatures. Outer reefers beaching again. The industry obviously means so much to Queensland. The Great Barrier Reef is the heart and soul of Queensland. And my question is what the candidates intend to do to protect those 64,000 reef jobs that we have? In terms of the industry working so hard to protect the reef themselves, how are you guys going to match that?
Personally. Yeah, look, the reef does supply us with basically all of our economic development here in the far north, and it has done for a very long time. To protect the reef, two things really need to happen. The first one is that climate change needs to be addressed. That is not just a local problem, that is a global problem, and Australia has a part to play in that. The other part of that is that we need to build resilience. Climate change is happening. It's upon us whether we like it or not. So we have to put in place measures and solutions that protect the reef in the short term until climate change as a whole is addressed. Now that includes working with the runoff of funds. It includes the $200 million investment into the waterways avenue. It includes the $50 million that's just been announced for wetland support. It includes getting rid of the feral pigs. All of these things make the reef more susceptible to the impacts of climate change. So the resiliency is what we really need to build up. In terms of supporting the industry itself, Trippy has been an incredible addition. Started during COVID, Senator Nina Green championed it, and basically it turns all of the reef boats into citizen science, labs, for lack of a better term. They kept eyes on the reef when no one was out there. That is providing us with the information that we need to ensure the reef's long-term survival, and it's been a fantastic addition to the dive industry. The dive industry and the environmental groups are all on the same page here. Everybody wants to save the reef, so working with the dive industry, working with environmental groups, all goes hand in hand, and hopefully we'll have the reef and these jobs for a much longer time to go.
Great question. As an independent, I'm not, as we know, the government and what the government is offering, and I certainly will be. We know that there's a lot of pork barrelling that's happening, but let me just say this, I actually don't think that Labor will get in on a second term. I believe that Australia as a nation will divorce itself from its ways. And getting back to your question, that you can't keep throwing money at situations. I believe in the support of the reef. It's World Heritage of Reef and Rainforest. It's so important that we all look after it, that we play our role in seeing this reef looked after. And as Gavin said, that Indigenous people need to know how to look after it, how to maintain it. They know how to bring restoration. They know how to farm the ocean, to look after it very, very strongly. I think that we all play a key role and have influence, a great influence. We can all make a difference to our wonderful reef. We have people from all over the world, and I believe that if we get it right here in Australia, as we know the importance, it's got to come back to the table of families and those conversations. As I said, it's got to get around the table and families talking about these things, talking to our children And let me say, these children, I remember having young ones from kindergarten, so I gave them a 2-metre painting. It may be not what you want, but I believe that you can get something there out of what I'm saying. I gave a 2-metre painting to these children, and what they painted, I said, I want to paint Reef and rainforest. These children came up with a wonderful, wonderful piece of canvas. And I believe that if we look at it in a different way, we will paint a different scenario for what's needed. And change is needed, certainly. We can look at climate change and that, but look, I can't pull out the guy and tell him to switch off turn off the cyclones or the thunders or whatever it might be. He's in control of everything.
First, I'd just like to observe that people who organise this event tonight, including Divers for Climate and people who work on the reef, in a way, you're highlighting the condition of the reef. So in a sense, you are like custodians or rangers, if you like, and you already know that the condition of the reef is necessary for your survival. So you offering stewardship is a way of living on that resource with hopefully a low impact effect and making sure it's available for future generations. But back to the cause of the problem, we basically have to stop the use of fossil fuels. And in Australia, we know what we have to do, and if you do it yourself, you have leverage to persuade other countries to do it. Yes, you can argue that we're only some small percentage of the overall problem, but if we don't get fracking, why should somebody else do anything? So if we expect there to be a global solution, we have to do our part. In terms of resilience or minimising the damage, the Greens are again proposing ideas of reducing runoff and topsoil loss from farmlands along the coast. Again, it's an example where we might have people who live off the land, and we can entice them to look after the land, reduce the negative environmental impacts, and make their hopefully lesser impact activity sustainable. In terms of the condition of the reef itself, there was a 2022 report that said that we should be paying more attention to the condition of species on the reef. So the Greens are proposing some money to allow the implementation of that 3-year-old report, and the aim is to give us knowledge of how species are adapting or perhaps not adapting if they're already endangered. I'm just trying to think of, sorry, there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh yes, look, there is one last thing we would like to do. We're a little bit worried that sometimes the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority gets pressured by the government. Now, it's meant to be an independent authority, but really it's got to be able to tell us how good or bad things are without fear or favour. So we're proposing a slightly different funding for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority to give it more independence, because we need that independent information.
Thank you, Philip. To our next guest question on the issue of climate and disaster resilience. Do we have Tia Divanov? Tia?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tia Divanov, and this is my mum, Letitia Pedersen. We are neighbours to Cairns, where my mother grew up here in the life. People are the Gujul, Gurindji and Worbid identities. And on the other side is the Kalani people. I'm a final year student at Oxford University, finishing my final exercise, a Bachelor of Science degree, majoring in zoology and ecology. I've been a Catholic member and volunteer for 6 years, and I'm deeply passionate about the causes and effects of climate change, particularly the long-term impacts it has on communities, especially Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. My mother's home at Holloway's Beach was flooded in December of 2023 when our region experienced record-breaking rainfall, like so many other communities across this region. And just wanting to ask the question, sorry. If elected, how will you and your party help communities in Leichhardt adapt to increasing climatic extremes such as heat waves, bushfires, cyclones flooding in there, right? Why is it so little?
So we just had a request from the audience to repeat the questions just because some people aren't hearing them. So the question was, how will you help protect communities from bushfires, heat waves, floods and other disasters from climate change?
This is very fortuitous. The Greens were going to release their disaster resilience policy last week. However, it turned out to be a very inappropriate time because of the disaster in Brisbane. So what I'll give you is my knowledge of our policies in this area, and I'll also talk about what some of our senators have been doing. Now, the general thrust of our disaster resilience policy is to essentially build things back better, and we want to reduce future costs and future hardship. People often talk about the costs. Yes, we know we've got to reduce that, but there's real hardship as well. In terms of the housing, for example, one of those policies has been released by us, and in our urban housing policy, we've specifically stated that housing development should be ruled out in floodplains. Now, this is a really simple idea, and you might think it's really a local government issue or a state government issue, but I think in the end it's going to have to be a federal government issue because these other two levels of government can't sort it out between them. Whereas the federal government can use the force of restricting funding to get some action. Back on the telecommunications side, for example, in about 2023, Senator Marie Faruqi was working on a report in the Senate that was looking at resilience in telecommunications in Australia. And one of the recommendations from that report, which is in our policy where it's going to be, is that we list telecommunications as an essential service. So that means there is a requirement for you to have a service, even if it means there's temporary roaming, or your phone works on another network, or whatever. In an emergency, all those restrictions go out because it is essential. Another one of our senators was looking at we're also looking at insurance costs, and we have a policy that will say we're broadening the scope of insurance cover, such as the Cyclone Reinsurance Fund, to cover all natural disasters, because we don't think there's any particular difference. We've got to spread the risk, and the other thing we'll do is actually have a national risk map.
Thank you for your question. Look, Jasper taught us a lot, and it was a very hard time for a lot of people. So, as a response, Jenny McAllister came up, she announced $2.8 million to properly flood map the Barron Delta so that we actually know where that water's going to go into the future. And then included early flood warning systems on both the Barron and the Mulgrave rivers, so we know when the water's coming, so that you can have that opportunity to leave if you need to. There's a couple of things that came out of that as well. Phil touched on a little bit, but the mental toll, the emotional toll of going through something like that is often a lot worse than the infrastructure toll. You can build back better. We're going to do so with the Bruce Highway, with the $7.8 billion commitment there. But we're also putting in research to understand what it means for people when they are subjected to an incident like that. How are they going to bounce back? What services are needed? How do we make their lives easier, better? One of my daughter's good friends was in Holloway's Beach. She's 17 years old. She's trying to do year 12. She's not home yet. They're in a 2-bedroom apartment that she's sharing with her 15-year-old brother. It's not an appropriate place for her to live. What support does she need? What makes her life easier to get her through year 12, to get on with the rest of her life? So it's not as simple to say, oh, we're going to get a reinsurance or we'll just build that better. People at the forefront of this happened. When Jasper occurred, I was speaking to some people in Boston after they'd been cut off. One of the women said to me that the best thing she'd ever seen in her life was a fleet of ergon trucks arriving en masse into that town. She said it was like something out of a movie. And she felt secure and comforted that people had come to help. And that got her through some really, really dark times. I'm sorry that you guys went through that. And we're going to try to put those wraparounds around you so that if anything happens again, you will feel supported and you will feel comforted.
Thank you for your question. I think you know, for us mob, it's just so important that we're there together. Aboriginal people are there. A lot of people don't understand when, you know, when you see other nations, people from other nations, and they come here and live in Australia, the Indigenous people of Australia are not like that, where they just pack up and go overseas to, whether it's Canada or America or places there like that. No, they're so attached to home. And that's why family connection is so important, that we're there. And sometimes we just need to bring that, you know, the authenticity about what we do. It's just common sense. And Aboriginal people have always, you know, they just do things. When there's help, when there's fires around, when there's cyclones and that around, we're just there on the phone. And we need to compete. We need to completely. Family is just so strong. It's so important. I was speaking to an elder there the other day from Wudja, and we know with the cyclone and Jasper, you know, what I would like to see in some of those Aboriginal communities and Torres Strait Islander communities is a better infrastructure. You know, like we have here in Cairns, we have buildings when people are facing atrocities or whatever it might be, and they have places to go because they can't go back to their homes. But this elder, when he was talking, you know, and I was only thinking about how there should be like a two-story type buildings that's on these communities. And, you know, we've got to stop wasting money on other things. We need to look at people that's in these communities, real people. We've got to get real about, you know, the situation of our nation. And like I said, it comes back to that grassroots level. And to the point that it does affect the mental health. It does affect all these other things. I mean, just in that Aboriginal community of Wudja, he had to bring his wife down here after waiting for 2 years to do dialysis. That is disgusting. Australia is a rich nation. Australia is a blessed nation. So where are we putting our money? Our money is obviously in our mouths and needs to go into right ways. And I believe that as a candidate, I will make sure someone that's not funded by government and still in business, not by government and still in business, I believe that I could probably do a better treasurer's job than the one that we already have.
Thank you for that question. On to energy. Now we have Eve to ask a quick. There she is.
Hello, my name is Eve. I'm here representing Parents for Climate, and I'm a very blessed mother of two beautiful girls. My question, well, families are bearing the brunt of cost of living pressures, especially high energy costs. Renewable energy with battery storage is now the cheapest form of energy available. Families who have access to clean energy from rooftop solar, batteries, and energy efficiency upgrades are saving hundreds and in many cases thousands of dollars each year on energy costs. But too many families are excluded from accessing these cost savings because they rent or can't afford the upfront costs. So my question is, what is your plan to lower energy costs and ensure reliable power for families while still meeting ambitious climate targets?
Just repeating Eve's question, if you didn't hear it down the back, what is the candidates' plans and their parties, or in Norman's case as an independent, to lower energy costs and ensure reliable power to families while still meeting ambitious climate targets? Bill, if you want to kick us off with that one?
Well, I happen to agree with you that renewables and storage is still the current cheapest form of electricity when you amortise the construction of the facilities. At the moment, it's still cheaper than the alternatives from that candidate just there. And the Greens would be saying that we need to accelerate that transition. We've got this one-off opportunity to let that transition drive job creation, often in rural areas. So it's actually a good fit for maintaining employment. In terms of actually supporting the transition from a household point of view, in this election cycle, we're promoting the idea that there's now a federal government program for helping people electrify their homes. It's part of the electrify everything approach, but also to have a battery in the home. The advantage of a battery in the home, and also for small business, by the way, is that that means that peak energy flows across the modern grid are lower. And that means the grid itself will not be as expensive. It doesn't have to be as big. That's not really appreciated by our opponent, Roy. The idea that we can keep expanding fossil fuel extraction is a bad idea. It's not logical. It's making the problem worse. And if you start delaying the transition, the system we've got becomes less reliable. So from a point of view of resilience, reliability, cheapness, extra jobs, we just have to keep going down that path. That's why it's really important that the LNP is not returned at this election.
I think you'll look at me with probably frowns. Give me a fire any day, give me a campfire any day. And as I said, it's I have the right to freedom of speech and whatever I believe and what I want to say. But I grew up around campfires. I grew up cooking around campfires. Where I grew up is in Wandegla, Herberton. Who's heard of that place? Yeah. Atherton, born in Atherton, right out there in the sticks. Mum and Dad knew what it was like to look after us. Slept under, if you hear the term of sleeping under the stars, you know what I mean, hey? Yeah. A lot of homeless people know that there as well. And I would, as I said, give me a fire any day. It doesn't matter what you think. You can think what you sensitive. But for me, and the survival of my own family it was, you know, when you boil a billy over a fire, a campfire, when you put a piece of damper or something on a stick over a fire, it tastes even better and nice. And you know, I think we just need to be practical. As I said, look at the buildings and that we're in there now. We talk about cost of living, but look, we're in a pretty flashy place. Maybe next time you and I we have a conversation, just come and sit under the mango tree with me, or in the backyard, or even around a campfire. Pull up a stump, and you know, let's just we talk about cost of living, but you and I don't really know what it's like to be broke. We just all talk in Murray terms. You just hammer.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Eve. Eve presented me with a pledge a few days ago and got Tanya Plibersek as a bonus, which she seemed pretty happy with. But the cost of living pressures over the last few years have really exposed how dependent we are on the electricity and the electricity prices. The answer is, of course, renewables. Renewables are free. The sun does not send an invoice, the wind does not send an invoice. There is work around what this is going to look like for strata tiles. I live in an apartment. I don't own the top floor of that apartment, I own the bottom floor of the apartment. There is work being done on the policy to ensure that solar panels can go across that apartment and then the electricity is shared amongst everybody, reducing our footprint, reducing the cost. Because as you said, not everyone can own a home. Yeah, we're doing some work around community batteries. There's the Wujja microgrids. The coal-fired power stations are expensive and they're running out of time. Their useful life is coming to the end. So renewables, batteries, these are going to form a part of the mix moving forward to bring down those prices. It has been tough with electricity prices, but we can't just switch it off straight away. This is going to take some time. We unfortunately lost 10 years on getting this right, and instead of coming up with a solution, we've got a $600 billion nuclear plan of some description that's going to add an extra 2 billion tonnes of carbon into the atmosphere. We have a plan for the future. We have a plan for renewable energy. We're getting there as quickly and as justly as we can.
Thank you. Just further to that, there have been calls for a national government subsidy, similar to what we have with solar panel rebates, to further reduce the cost of batteries for householders. Is that something that you would support?
that is what we're proposing. So we think there should be a national proposal to subsidise batteries in households only with small business. Some people might look at that as some kind of charity action, and obviously it is great for families and small business, but it's actually a sensible thing to do because it's going to reduce, as I said before, the peak capacity of the grid that has to be built or upgraded. And so in a way, we're also saving money. I expect that there will probably be some form of energy subsidy in this year's federal budget. It's becoming a tradition. I would say that the Greens will support that proposal when it goes through Parliament.
Matt, is that something the ALP will consider? Not just loans, but a subsidy?
I'm not across every single policy detail. I did speak to Chris Bowen today, but we didn't bring that up. We did speak a lot about green hydrogen, and there will be an announcement in the coming days around green hydrogen, which we do see as a future part of the mix, particularly for that baseload power. But in terms of subsidies for batteries, it's not something that I can comment on accurately.
Oh yeah, well obviously I can't speak on party platforms, and that's what's happening. I'm someone in the middle of two major parties here as an independent, and I believe that I certainly have the I hope I've got your heart and your back to give support to the independents, because what's being said is just party platforms. I've got notes here that are written down ready for this, so I thought, look, throw this away. Because we just need to just get back to basics. What's going to make Australia as a wonderful nation? Someone like myself, I love this nation. I love Australia. And what it's going to take is Australians to bring back those values that, and that's the Judeo-Christian values there as well. So you can be sure that, Labor and obviously the Greens, they want to throw this out. That's I know what they will support, because I've got a different platform to what's been said here. I'm here that so you can just hear me, because it's so important when Anthony Albanese, he's probably crying at the moment because he lost the voice treating truth in that, and he didn't speak to other Indigenous people. He certainly didn't speak to Indigenous Christians, and like myself. So I think, thanks, Anita. You know what it's like.
Now, let's head to the Torres Strait for a question from our islands, our homes. We have Susanna.
Kupu everyone. My name is Susanna Mosby, and I'm an island club ambassador. I'm from Mastic Island in the Torres Strait. So Torres Strait Islanders are on the front line of the climate crisis, and urgent action is needed to ensure we can remain on our ability. King tides, erosion, inundation, and coral bleaching are threatening the homes and culture of our people. Rising sea levels are already threatening our homes and damaging the freshwater supplies, crops, burial grounds, and sacred cultural sites. So my question is, how will you support Torres Strait communities to both adapt to the climate impacts we are already experiencing and prevent further impacts through a stronger emission reduction?
Thank you so much, Susanna. Well, we might start with you, Norman.
Certainly my support for the Torres Strait Islands, and that the changes that you experience. We are so blessed. The people of the Torres Strait Islands, when people from all over the world, when they come to Australia, they don't realise that there's two Indigenous people groups here, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And that's so important that I always, last time I know that Arab Island and places there like that, but I certainly will be pushing this government and whoever gets in, but I can surely tell you that it won't be a Labor government. It'll be, it certainly won't be a Labor government that will be pushing the changes that you necessarily need. And I just want to just say to you that as an independent, I do hope the what the Albanese government done with that voice treaty of truth, see, you not only lost the nation of Australia, but the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need to put a vote ban, and listen to me, on Albanese. It's in his name. You know, you've got to look at how you spell Albanese, and we need to put a vote ban, because we can't allow this government to service us anymore. I think they're just making too many mistakes, and they've just divided our nation. We need to be a nation that's got to come closer, and the Torres Strait Islanders. I know in years that you wanted to be a sovereign nation, but I believe that you need to support strongly of the Greater Australia.
Matt, your response to that?
I was actually up on Thursday Islands with Mr. Giles about a couple of weeks back, and I do travel around the Torres Strait Islands fairly regularly for work. One of the first people I met when my candidacy was announced was Yassi, and he explained the absolute flora of the cemeteries at Marcy, and I don't want to step on his story, but that's where his children are buried. And he assured me that no matter what, he was going to die on that island with his babies. So this is an existential crisis. There is going to be people who have a lot of different solutions, but the solutions themselves have to come from Torres Strait Islanders. The last thing that the Torres Strait needs is somebody rolling and going, right, we're going to go there. That's not going to work. So I'm looking forward to working with community to understand your solutions, and then how I can assist in forwarding that to Canberra, raising awareness. Yassi has his plan to sail the old boat from the Torres Strait to Brisbane. That will raise awareness. That will get Australia talking about the Torres Strait. People talk about the Pacific Islands, but they don't understand this is an existential threat to our own country, and needs to be addressed immediately, but it has to be addressed the proper way, the cultural way, and I look forward to working with you to come up with these solutions.
I happen to be one of the people who donated to the two articles on TI running the climate case. And last night we got an update from another supporter of that climate case to let us know that it's now 40 years since the TI treaty was agreed to. And in that email last night, the lady who wrote said, you know, maybe we didn't think far enough ahead back in 1985 when that treaty was agreed to, because perhaps the Australian government is not really looking after the well-being of people in TI. And I think I agree with that somewhere. We are not. We know that climate change is going to cause that area to flood more frequently and perhaps higher as well. And so we really have to do the remedial action right now. We've got to tackle the big problem as well, which is stop the crazy use of fossil fuels. So that is just the big problem. But back to what we can do now. Our resilience policy, which I hope will not be delayed by another cyclone in Brisbane, we'll be looking at what we can do for coastal communities to help them survive in the short term. Longer term, though, we've got to tackle that big problem. I think that a Labor to our Greens Party member would always back the right of TI people to sue the Australian government for not looking after them. And it was similar in some other cases where the 6 children in Sydney were trying to get the Australian government to have duty of care for looking after their future. Now, in the coming Parliament, there's going to be a bill put by Senator Pocock, the non-Green Senator Pocock from the ACT, and he's putting forward a bill which will require governments to look after the future for future generations. I think that bill from an independent, I'm sure the Greens would be supporting it, that needs to get through or get up in Parliament.
All right, speaking of fossil fuels, we have a question from Neal from the Australian Religious Response for Climate Change. Neal?
My name is Neil Ford, and I'm from the Cairns-based Australian Religious Response for Climate Change. And there's information about us on the table just over there. It's a multi-faith organisation of people from around Australia who are committed to taking action on climate change. And the mantra is, we are united by a fundamental belief that all people, all living things and the earth are sacred. Now my question is to all of the candidates here, from a faith and moral perspective, how important is it to you to make a priority and commitment to stop new coal and gas projects and to end public subsidies for coal and gas projects?
Well, let me just say first, I'm not a Christian, but I've got a very high regard for the writings of the current Pope. And one of the really interesting things from that particular Christian perspective is that we do have this responsibility to look after the environment, the living things on our planet that we, in a way, have stewardship over. And we've got to live here in a way that lets all those other things live. And it's not just that we're doing it, for shallow reasoning. We've got to do it so future generations can have the same kind of life as us. So I personally think it's extremely important, and that long-term view is the fundamental element of how the Greens look at these issues. If we can't do something that looks after future generations, we're just robbing the young people and having a party now. So for me, it's really important, and I'm sure it's extremely important for all of the Greens and all those poor members of the Greens that sit in policy meetings and chug away at figuring out our policies, which I can tell you is one hell of a grind, but it's what we do. We try to take that long-term view.
Thank you. Just repeating the question, from a faith and moral perspective, how important is it to you to make a priority and commitment to stop new coal and gas projects and end public subsidies for coal and gas projects? And I'll hand that to you now.
Wonderful question. I think as from when I made the remark, I think I honour our God, the Creator, that created everything, the land and the sea, even you human beings here today. And it's so important that, you see, your major parties, Labor and Green, we know where they think. Their plans to take the Lord's Prayer, they'll destroy it. Their plans to, Labor itself was a Christian party. You wouldn't think that today. It was, but it's not. And I think the importance of your question, that the churches will vote, and I believe that this election, to what you were saying, is just so crucial. And we do need to look after the earth. We do. We need to be, as Philip mentioned so many times, was be stewardships there of the land. It's just like when God had Adam and Eve. It was always Adam and Eve in the garden, and they had to look after it. They had to maintain the garden, and so we have also a responsibility of things that we sow into this land. And from what I can see on a spiritual term is this Labor government has sown seeds of discord, and which are very, very unfruitful.
Matt, just before you answer your question, I just want to throw in, obviously last year, Tony Composite did approve 3, not technically new, they were expanded coal mines in New South Wales. So, so just if you can respond to Neil's question, just in light of the fact that the LP has just approved at like a 30-40 year life, potentially, of these mines.
You might be about to lose some friends. It can be, ultimately yes, fossil fuels have to be phased out, and they have to be phased out quickly. That's not up for debate. What we're looking for is a just transition. There are 5 million homes in Australia right now that require gas for heating. You can't go to the south of Tasmania and take that off them. That is a life or death scenario for these people. It is going to take time to wean both the economy and the infrastructure off fossil fuels. It is happening now at a rate that is unseen in Australian history. We've lost a decade. Let's not sugarcoat what has happened here. We should be 10 years ahead of where we are. We should be at our 82% already. We should have done all of these things. There should have been vehicle standards, but it didn't happen. We have to get it done, but it has to be done in a way that brings the entire country and the entire world with us. There's no point torturing or having people suffer for that, because guess what? Don't get angry. They'll vote for these cats, and that's where you are then. We have to bring people with us. Yes, sir, there is an absolute moral responsibility for us to take care of this planet for our children and for their children's children, for the people that you and I will never meet. And I hope that we can get there, I really do. But we have to bring people with us.
Currently, I think Tasmania and South Australia are leading the push towards renewables. I think in 3 years' time, 3 years ahead of time, South Australia has announced it will be powered 100% by renewables. Queensland's way down the list when it comes to renewables. What is this region doing? What would you like to see, or what would your parties like to see happen to increase the amount of renewable energy produced in this region?
The first thing I'd like to see would be any proposed wind farm taking into account the ecological value of the area where the developer is intending to place it. Because if you look at the proposals that have been occurring in the electorate west of here, in Kennedy, it's as if somebody looks at a map, tries to identify the nearest location to a wet tropics area or some ecologically unique resource, and puts an area there for renewables. And this is the kind of crazy thinking you do if you don't want renewables to have a chance. I mean, it's like a form of sabotage. So we sure as hell do not want the people that were picking areas on the tableland to be picking any future areas using the same criteria. It turns out that in our area, I'm not familiar exactly where our best wind resources are. I am a bit more familiar with the tablelands actually, but in Leichhardt, there probably are some areas north of here. We are an interesting area in that we do happen to have one of the largest solar farms at the very end of a transmission line, and normally the coal-fired people will tell you that that's not possible, but ours has been there stabilising the grid for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. Apparently that's not possible either, according to coal people.
Another question was, what do we need to be doing here in far north Queensland to increase our use of renewables?
Look, the easiest thing we can do is get cracking with batteries. So grid-scale batteries of the chemical form, I think they're the easiest option for us. We already happen to have very good or relatively good network links into the north. So for us, it's more a case of storage and then making the most of our rooftop solar.
I'm in the middle of 2 boat plants.
Over to Anthony.
There's some really great stories to tell about our transition to renewable energy up here. I mean, there really are. We are sitting on Carramine Beach on some of the highest grade silica on the planet. Fantastic for making photovoltaic cells. That creates an entirely new industry for the region, creates jobs and creates renewable energy. We have more sun and water than we know what to do with. We've got the community battery project, the Wujju Wujju microgrid. We are on the cusp of some really great stuff. SAF. Who's heard of SAF? SAF is sugar aviation fuel. Somebody much, much smarter than me has discovered that you can turn an organic product into jet fuel, the byproduct of which is biodiesel. There is a way that you can have a renewable air force and then power the entire Reef fleet on biodiesel. We have more sugar than we know what to do with. There is industry ready to go. The far north is this close to becoming a renewable energy superpower. I'm asking you to come with us on this journey. These guys want to take that away. They want to have a nuclear power station somewhere down near Gladstone. It's not going to help anything. These are both environmental and economic solutions for our region that can take us into the 21st century, and then we were going to be that shining light that the rest of the world can look at and go, hey, Australia, Cairns, they're doing it right. How have they done it? They're protecting the reef. We'll be able to export this technology. We are at the forefront of making this world a better place.
Thank you. Now, when you registered, many of you wrote some fantastic questions, and I'm going to try and get to as many of those as I can and put those to our candidates. Again, candidates have a couple of minutes, or 2 minutes, to answer these questions. The first question comes from Sarah. She asks, if elected, will you declare a climate emergency?
That is the Greens policy. So my answer would be yes. And I guess we would want that to be a practical, useful thing to do. So it would ideally mean that we could marshal resources to hasten that transition to renewables, cut the umbilical cord from the fossil fuels, make use of whatever the technologies are for storage. And by the way, storage costs are going down at such a rate that in Australia at the moment, when people buy and sell battery projects, the cost is changing on almost a monthly basis. In January, I would have said that grid storage dropped by 20% last year. The number now is 40%. And this has been driven by the automobile industry. It's a hugely synergistic thing. EV prices are going down, grid storage is going down. So things are happening. The thing that's not happening is, are we trying to transition our industry? Are we doing the best we can at moving people into other jobs? And we Greens will be paying attention to that. As I said before, or maybe it was in a TV interview, when we've got changes like this happening in our economy, it's the role of government to look after people. Yes, the change is necessary for environmental reasons or just having a more efficient industry. But when people's jobs are involved, it's our joint responsibility to look after them. So that the government should be managing that transition, not letting it be some kind of half-baked accident.
And what are your thoughts on this one? The question was, if elected, would you declare a climate emergency?
Certainly. It's, we need to, on the home front, making sure that we have all those things available to us in our own homes, like, emergency kits, making sure that our roads and other infrastructures are right and ready. And, really just saw the last big flooding that came through even towns or places when one of the roads, and I hope that the elected governments will make sure that we have better systems on our nation's roads. We can't go through another situation like we did when we had a lot of you can see that I'm going right off the cuff to some of the things that you're saying, but that's all right, because I want to be authentic. And I know that this room here is probably another thing, but when we talk about these things, it just brings it home. And for those of the elite, or those that are rich, that don't really know what it's like, or what the day-to-day people really go through. Certainly there needs to be people that are helped, especially elderlies, within our, making sure that a lot of evacuation procedures that are in the place. And so certainly we need to, who knows when the next cyclone or the next flood, and we've had big floods rain just recently, and we need to be in better place. And the importance is we stay safe and we can be there for each other.
The work is being done. Over 15 gigawatts of electricity, renewable electricity, has gone back into the grid over the last 3 years. That is a significantly larger margin than was placed in the previous 10. It's more than the nuclear power plants are going to put in. I grew up on the oil and gas fields in Victoria, next to the coal mines. They're transitioning to wind. They're very, very excited about the new jobs. They're very excited about the transition that they're going to undertake. The work needs to be done. Declaring a climate emergency and doing the same thing doesn't matter. You've got to be out there putting in the hard yards. You've got to be out there talking to the communities that are going to have these changes and bringing them with you. And that's what the Labor government is out there doing. 15 gigawatts is not to be sneezed at. We're on track to meet our 82% commitment for 2030. We're already 43% in. We are getting 46%, sorry. We're out there trying to make the changes right now for our kids tomorrow.
All right. You have made mention of nuclear energy, and we do have a couple of questions from people on this one. Belinda has asked, is there a role for nuclear energy into the future? And Garth has also asked, what are your concerns with nuclear energy? Okay, so Philip, if you want to start us off with that one, is there a role for it? What are your concerns for it?
I guess if you were trying to create a job creation program for nuclear engineers, there's a role for it. But there's no role for it to provide electricity in a sustainable way in Australia. And as Matt said before, the current proposal from that guy is to delay the retirement of these increasingly unreliable coal-fired power stations to an extent that there will be a net increase in CO2 pollution. So definitely it's a, well look, I sometimes think I should quote Matt Canavan. Matt Canavan says that nuclear power is a technical solution to a political problem. And he is quite correct. What we see here is a proposal that sounds, I don't know, greenish. It's sort of like truish as well. There's a whole lot of issues there. But it doesn't tackle the problem that nobody can make a nuclear power station for a lower price than the previous effort. And on the other hand, every time a new renewable energy project comes out, its price has gone down. So here we are, right now, at this point in time, renewables, the most expensive renewables with storage, are cheaper than the cheapest nuclear. And the nuclear price is going up and the renewables and storage is going down. And by the way, the nuclear people are a bit like the coal-fired people. The coal-fired people then use the Abbott method of checking for pollution. If you can't see CO2, it doesn't exist. But when you listen to the nuclear power people, they've got the same approach to nuclear waste. Apparently, it doesn't exist.
Norman, would you like to add to that?
I think just plain on words here. Nuclear, you can see it very clear, and I'm for it until you come up with a better solution. Getting back to some of the things that was put forward, I think all Australians is still waiting and waiting and waiting for that promise of the $275 reduced power bill.
There is no place for nuclear in Australia. That's the way. As I said earlier, I grew up in the oil and gas fields next to the coal mines. When I was 6, an oil rig my uncle was on exploded and he died. When I was 17, the Longford gas plant exploded. 6 people from my hometown were killed. When I was 22, the coal mines in the Latrobe Valley caught on fire and increased the mortality by 46%. Coal and gas is considered largely safe. If just one of those things happened to a nuclear power plant, it is not worth thinking about. But it is potentially dangerous, it is ridiculously expensive, and it has absolutely zero place in our country, near our reef, or near our children's homes.
Unfortunately, we're trying to get through as many questions as we can. Now, to Paul's question, we've talked a lot, obviously, about renewables this evening. He says the transition is well underway, but to get to net zero by 2050, Paul thinks seems unambitious. in the face of increasingly unprecedented natural disasters? How can we speed the process up? Philip?
So, okay, so when we say net zero, let's assume we mean, so who asked the question? We'll just, well, anyway, I'm going to assume that this question is about how we get to net zero for everything. When we are talking up here about net zero, getting to certain levels of reduction, we're often just looking at the easy part of the problem, which is the fixed energy sources, those electricity plants which are in one place. But when you look at just the way we live in general, there are other forms of energy that we also take for granted. There's the fixed industrial heat, for example. There's energy being used in transportation, road, rail, air. There's many different forms of energy used in our society, and each of them is slightly different and, generally speaking, slightly more difficult to deal with. We're only tackling the easy one at the moment, and that's really why we've tried to put these initial aims at CO2 reduction on electricity generation. The aim of the Paris Accord really is to try and get us in a moderately safe space environmentally so we can deal with the really seriously challenging problems. Matt mentioned carbon neutral aviation fuel. You know, there's a lot of work going on in that area, and that's an important aspect. In some parts of the world, people are actually restricting flights so that you can't have a flight shorter than a certain distance. So if you're in France, for example, you can't have a 1 hour flight. You must go by electric train, which, by the way, has a top speed of about 350 kilometres per hour. So not as good as Japan. Back on the road transport, again, there's some belief that this will be a hydrogen solution. I happen to think that it's a case where even if hydrogen is the best solution, the electrical batteries will probably win out simply because they're everywhere else in our society. And the price reductions as they're becoming more popular are astounding. It's very difficult now to predict the future price of green batteries.
Well, 2050, I don't think anyone in this room will be even alive. That's right. And none of you will be here. Full stop. That's a fact. My gallery, you know, I have lights, yeah, but I don't even have air conditioning. And so all these, from Greens to Labor and that, I mean, okay, so what are they going to do? Take out all the air conditions out of Parliament House and whatever. All these parliamentarians, are they going to be start walking? You know, Aboriginal people, we knew how to walk. We just barefoot. How many of you are planning in the next few days to walk from home into your work barefoot? I knew what it was like. I knew what it was like to wear bare feet. And how many of you have just flown around Australia every day, and yet you want to come out and talk of this? Many of you go on flights and you want to talk about carbon emissions and all these other things, and clean energy, green, and whatever. You're just making a joke of yourself.
I think the important part of net zero by 2050 is that net zero by 2050 at the latest. We're not going to get to 2049 and go, oh, we've got 15% left, we can pump the brakes here. And the great thing about humanity as a whole, and Phil touched on it a little bit, is the technology is getting better. We've already achieved 43%. Technology is going to increase its capacity to deliver electricity, it's going to increase its ability for storage, it's going to get cheaper. This is going to accelerate as time moves on. Green hydrogen, there'll be, like as I said earlier, Chris Bowen's going to make some announcements for that. A lot of people believe that is a future for power generation, for baseload power. That's one of the answers. We're finally putting in emissions restrictions on cars. That will bring down emissions. So net zero is achievable, and it will only get faster as the technology starts to improve. They're the smartest people in the world right now are working on this because they believe in the environmental outcomes, but they believe in the economic outcomes as well. And they'll get there in the end, trust me on this.
Still on energy, Bryn asks, how will you secure a long-term sustainable energy supply that also protects ecosystems and biodiversity? Matt, I might start with you on that.
It's going to have to be a mix. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution for this, so it's going to have to include storage. Hydro has proven to be very effective in the past. Wind, solar. There's going to be a multiple tiered approach to this, I guess. There is going to be some impact. Solar farms take up space, wind take up space. You compare that impact to, say, an open-cut coal mine or the waste from a nuclear power plant. So to say that there will be completely no impact from power generation, it can't be done. There will be batteries have to be made, solar panels have to be made. But what we can do is minimise our impact as small as possible to ensure that our planet has a chance to heal and our children have a good future.
I'm certainly not for all these wind farms. What happens when the wind doesn't blow? They just sit there. And what about all the animal life, bird life, especially around these areas? These wind farms, Chris Bowen and his energy. How many of us will be going out and buying one of these cars that how much are they worth? About $70,000? 30,000. Are you planning on buying one? When you can? Okay. So in the meantime you'll just walk.
Look, I think there's a mix of further developing our circular economy, and there's a role for regulation. The whole idea of government, if you're in power and choose to use it, is we're trying to make the world a better place. So we in the Greens would say that our Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act needs some teeth. There's got to be a clause in there, subject to disagreement with Western Australian Labor, I suppose, to say that if a proposal is going to make things worse, then that project needs to get very special consideration in checking. And any chance of species going extinct has to be properly examined. So teeth in the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act, that's the regulation aspect. I think that we can do more in the circular economy with our recycling efforts. There are processes now that are being licensed around the world, including, for example, car battery recycling, where companies like BMW, using product placement, I guess, are actually out there putting that available in their dealerships. So they are dealing with batteries that, say, by the way, is missing. So recycling of batteries, recycling of turbine components, that's all pretty normal. And can I just talk momentarily about the transition itself? Is that okay? Look, I would just say also that we can bring people along. We need to get people on board, and many parts of the economy have options now, including people who use diesel in tractors. You know, there are ethanol-based fuels that can go in those devices that again make them more environmentally friendly. So I would mention that.
Now, we're fast running out of time, but I just wanted to know if there are any burning questions from the floor. If anyone, at the back there? Can I get someone to run a mic?
Hi everyone. Just want to know if what you and your party do to get renewables for renters. Yeah. If they're aware of getting renewable energy like solar panels and wind up for people who rent homes and apartments.
Philip, on that one?
So renewables go rent.
Look, I'm just relying on my memory here, and I believe that one of our senators did put a proposal in to support some form of common ownership for solar panels, but I don't have the details on me. well, fairly sure a couple of years ago in the Greens we were looking at that, and it was probably because at the time we were looking at how to better structure cooperative housing, I guess, companies. There's a lot of effort in trying to address homelessness by giving cooperative housing organisations better ability to access funding. And one of the problems they have then is also how to share that renewable energy. So I'm sure the Greens have got proposals, but I can't tell you what they are right now.
Comment on that one? Matt?
Yeah, look, the work's being done on that already, whether the policy's been properly announced or whether it's coming in the future. Particularly around strata title, because it is difficult for people in apartment blocks to have solar panels, particularly if, like me, you live on the bottom floor and don't have access to a roof. But there is work around that so that the electricity gathered by those panels will be distributed equally amongst those things. And that'll work for apartment blocks such as mine towers in the city, things like that. So the work on this is already started. There's also work around making our social houses more environmentally conscious, including things like larger marinas. So to impact the heat of the sun, therefore requiring less electricity for cooling, things of that nature, including solar panels in those builds, solar hot water, things of that nature. So yes, it's in train, and it's a very important part of what has happened, because not everyone owns a home and not everyone owns a roof like me.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to move over here to hand you the mic.
Hi, good evening everyone. First of all, thanks to the candidates for being here. I think we've all thoroughly enjoyed hearing from you all tonight. My question is only for Norm. Norm and I know each other. We used to be in the same Labor branch many years ago. Norm, you spent a bit of time tonight having a go at the politicians and particularly Labor. So, simple closed question, yes or no answer. Do you think that the Liberal Party and Peter Dutton would do a better job for the environment? Yes or no? That's all I want to hear. Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Believer. Yes, I think he would. No doubt. No, I think, as the leader said, got it.
All right, over here. Do you want to just...
I'm surprised that nobody has mentioned the P word tonight when questioning the candidates. P-L-A-S-T-I-C-K. There's no K in plastic. So my question to the candidates are, where does plastic feature in any of your environmental protections policies? As we can clearly see, we are drowning in plastic. We are also drowning in invisible microchemicals as a byproduct of the plastic degradation process. That's in the water, that's in the air, that's in the soil. So, what are we going to do about the plastic problem?
Thank you for your question. All right, Matt, over to you.
A very real problem. It is estimated that 100% of marine life has ingested or has some kind of microplastic in their bodies. And I guess in recognition of how serious a threat this is, the federal government has invested a lot of money in Tangaroa Blue and plastic migration studies, I guess. A lot of work, particularly in Cairns, has been done by the local government around getting rid of plastics. Plastic straws are gone, plastic cups are gone. They're doing the work here. But there's still so much plastic out there in the ocean. What Tangaroa Blue and other organisations like it doing are tracking where that plastic comes from. Now, if we know that it's coming from country X, what support can we give to them to ensure that their plastic impact on our part of the world is lessened and what plastic impact on their part of the world is lessened? I've dived the Great Barrier Reef, I've dived in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea. Some of what's going up there with the amount of plastic pollution is absolutely heartbreaking. You see marine animals use a plastic bag as a house, we already know the risk that plastic bags show for turtles. So look, locally we're doing a good job with plastics, but we need to work harder with other countries internationally to ensure that they come on that journey with us.
Thank you, mate. I think common sense is you know, it's there, and we need to care as we do. I mean, you wouldn't go out and just throw plastics out of the yard. Just you'd do the right thing. That's common sense. That's just a practical way of it. You know, even our streets there are cans, and there's over the years, I know you that's in this room, and you've seen paper and that, and you think, oh, why didn't that lazy person pick up that bit of paper or a plastic foot there, you know, on the ground? Why didn't they just pick that up and put it in the bin? It's people like you that go out and do that extra acts of random kindness, and I think that's important. Getting back to the skills, I think there's an awareness. You talk about the straws and things like that. There was a young lady from a school that really made an impact and schools are doing a lot of great things. And education comes back to education. Education is the key. And so we don't go trashing our own homes. You know, we look up to. And that's the same respect that we need to give our country, whether around the land or out there in the ocean.
Not plastic.
So I'm quite unprepared for this question. But I'm quite sure, sorry, I do remember in 2022, although we haven't released our circular economy policy yet, but in our circular economy policy, and it will be essentially the same, I'm sure, we are trying to get materials to be used in a closed way. So if we do have to have things made out of fossil fuel extracts, let's not forget that, then we want them to be reused. But back over in the marine area in particular, we've got policies addressing the stewardship again of the Great Southern Reef and the Great Barrier Reef. We're looking at both the reefs from just south of Ningaloo all the way around to roughly, Brisbane by memory, or it might be a bit further south, and then heading down the east side of Tasmania. There's proposals to try and start looking at what's happening in that reef, because there are major changes there, and so we'll be looking again at the pollution side, or the rubbish side of that, and we're also looking at better funding of monitoring what's happening in the Great Barrier Reef. And I guess to address plastic use, it's got to be circular, and I suppose we've also got to try and find alternative materials.
All right, I think we've got time for one more. Jenny, did you have a question?
Yes. I'll get one. We've talked about a lot of things, but what we haven't discussed is the fact, what are you going to do about what's happening out on the reef? So things like, we've got ships coming on the inside of the reef. Now, I work in Florida, and I can tell you what a disaster it is when a ship goes up on a reef. Also, we've got illegal fishing happening out there. We've got super fishing yachts, which are taking all of the food from our sharks and our animals, which is driving sharks closer into shore. What's going to be done about it? It's just getting out of hand. We've got these huge great Norwegian ships that just process and take everything. Illegal hunting out there. As I said, ships inside the reef is just crazy stuff. If we get an oil spill out here, we're in a real problem. I was one of the first people up in Cape York that was doing studies on marine debris before it came actually trendy. And I can tell you where all the marine debris comes from. And it's just terrible. And it's just more and more and more coming down all the time. You're not going to stop these countries. No matter which way, you're just not going to stop it. Because education doesn't go as far as some of these poor people that are out in villages, but they don't know any better. And you're not going to get to them to tell them not to throw everything in the ocean. So I'd like to know what you're going to propose about, the things that's happening now.
All right. Would you like to start with that one?
Okay. Well, look, I think there's a foreign affairs international angle set to your question, for starters, because we're talking about poor people coming into other countries. And then there's an aspect of just how are we policing what's going on the reef. And in both of these areas, the Greens would say that we need to foster good relationships with our neighbours, and that would mean that we figure out ways of getting them to agree not to come into, say, the northern parts of the Northern Territory or onto the west coast of WA, and taking what perhaps they have been taking for a very long time. But still we would be arguing for an international aid access aspect or an international relations aspect. Back on the reef itself, reef's in evidence, and I guess everybody has read it, that yes, cyclones can do damage and leave trails across the reef, but so can ship anchors and sometimes actual boats down near Gladstone. So there's got to be more regulation, tighter regulation of what some industrial uses are that make use of navigation in that area. I don't have any particular policy I can give that relates to missing fishery. I'm sorry. I can check back with you if you like, but it's quite possible that that at the moment is more of a state government responsibility. I'm not sure.
I think, just in a nutshell, I think border security doesn't go strong, does it? We don't need someone from one of the airlines, right? Not Jetstar, the other Virgin Airlines. Do we need someone like that to a plane looking down for better security of relations? Because we just let anything, everyone in here that's unchecked.
So under this government, there's been a significant expanse in the areas of the Great Barrier Reef that are protected, including, I mean, look, people can scoff at that, but under the previous government, the protected areas were reduced. They have now been expanded. That's an immutable fact. There's also the phasing out of gill netting to make sure that there is going to be enough fish for the ecological cycles to continue. In terms of piloting of ships, I actually don't know anything about that. So I don't want to sit here and comment on things that I don't know, because I'd say something that is completely incorrect. But this government is very serious about protecting the reef. It is more serious than any other Australian government in history. And the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in those protected areas. It's in the phasing out of gill nets.
All right, well that just about wraps things up for us tonight. Before we go though, I think our photographer wants to get a group photo. So where would you like us? Oh, you want us down here? Okay, so if everyone can, do you want everyone to stand up? I'm just going to get a photo. So. So we actually have some instructions from the photographer to squish in more, because it's actually quite a narrow lens. So rather than being a wide group, it can be a deep group. So yeah. And don't run off after the photo, because we're going to draw the raffle prize, the free reef trip. So don't run off straight away after the photos. Sorry, it needs to be a bit narrower still. Make sure the photo your face is not behind someone's sign. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's meant to be tall people at the back, just joking. Is that narrow enough? Do we want to, like, so everyone's ready, like, count to 3? Like, 1, 2, 3, smile? Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, look, now we'll do a video-friendly one. So, well, let's say protect the reef, and then after that cheer. It's really weird when it's just say protect the reef and then crickets chirping afterwards. So protect the reef, woo, and wiggly signs. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then we'll say protect the reef. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we'll just do one more take of that. Yeah? Oh, very polite. We'll just do the same one again. Yeah. Okay. We'll do protect the reef after 3. 1, 2, 3. Did you get everything you needed? Awesome. So we're going to do the raffle draw, and then we're done.
Before you all run off, have your tickets ready, grab your tickets out. And could I just have a big thank you to our 3 candidates who did come along tonight to answer lots of questions. Phil Musumeci from the Greens, Matt from the AMCS, and who is our independent for Leichhardt. Big thank you for your time tonight. Tonight's event has been organised by the Australian Marine Conservation Society, CAFMEC, Donors for Climate, the Queensland Conservation Council, and also involved Parents for Climate, the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, and Islands and Island. Big thank you all for coming tonight. Really appreciate your interest in coming to our event.